Greetings, everybody, and welcome. Today, we're going to have a little talk on some equity jurisprudence, and I want to welcome you guys again. We're back for more, so welcome to our little show, right? So today, I've got a couple things planned we're going to talk about, and one of them I'm going to really talk about, and I've kind of mentioned this before, but this is an interesting topic. It's a very interesting topic, especially if you have, if you have an interest in equity jurisprudence. And most people with the interest in the equity jurisprudence have also a conscience, because they can understand the discern, which means to understand the difference between what's right and what's wrong. Like when you do something, how you go about taking care of those steps. And when we go through schooling, we're taught a specific way to do things, and that method is a reliant method. Okay, it's a method where we rely on other people to do things for us. So in this podcast, what we're going to talk about is basically how equity will bring the truth to the surface on any sort of situation or matter. And it's no different under every single circumstance. People don't even know that this lane of equity exists that is parallel to what is currently seen or perceived as the law, but it does things outside of the scope of what like the regular law can do. And the regular law is just something that someone reads and they say, oh, well, this is the rules here, and this is what's happened, and those are the two things. So before we get started, I want to give you guys just a disclosure, and here it goes.
The following program contains mature content and is the truth. No part herein is intended to be legal advice and is for entertainment purposes only. Audience discretion is advised.
Okay, so first I'm going to start off with sharing, and I'm going to share because sharing is caring, and I care about you guys. So first of all, we like to show you what we just had. I had a guy that, now it's funny because sometimes we expect things to happen on a certain timeline, and, we're like, oh, this didn't work. Or, there's a lot of times where people have maybe been upset with me and like thought that maybe what I did didn't help them at all, but they didn't go back to see or ask, and come to find out that, well, they have something that's very different. And I'm not saying this is what those are, but this is one of the things we just had come in, and this is one of our successes. So you'll see that the score change went up 177 points. That's not a joke, folks. That's serious. And we've had this happen many times. Like, this is just one of the many things that we have happen. So just know that it exists. It's out there for anybody to utilize if you just learn what the whole entire paradigm and how it works. So as we talked before, and as I've spoken on this subject before, equity jurisprudence is a branch of law, and it is evolved to address the limitations and rigidity of common law. So people that are out there trying to do things in law, when you guys are seeing Title 42 stuff, that's all at law, and that's actually under wartime powers. So you're not going to get any traction on that or remedy as a private person in that realm. So Joseph's story provides a seminal definition stating that equity is that portion of remedial justice which is exclusively administered by courts of equity, as distinguished from that portion which is administered by courts of law. Okay, that's on page 1 of equity jurisprudence, folks. Page 1. That distinction highlights equity's role in offering flexible and fair remedies where common law, it falls short. The common law can't get this stuff done, folks. I'm telling you, I've told you, and it's right there in the book that they have to go by. Equity came about again, as I said before, and I've mentioned these things, these reminders, because the more we hear these things, the more you hear the truth, the more you learn the truth. So the truth will be revealed, folks. And that goes with everything. Look, we can sit back and stress about things and worry about whether, things are going to work out a certain way or whatever, or we just move on. We move forward and we take care of what we need to take care of. And I I have, things that obviously have come to my attention very recently. But, I'm working on taking care of those, but I can't do that in the past. I can't live in the past, you guys. So I have to, kind of move forward and do whatever we got to do to make this a magical experience for those that are really trying to apply themselves and want to learn. Now, I talked about this earlier, and I put it into the class before I continue. The reason, and I've talked about this so often, so many times, I can't even believe that there's just news going around or spreading around that the executor letter is somehow, or executor something is going to somehow get you something. The executor letter is to hold and occupy an office. It is not to operate because it is statutory. Once you choose statutory, you waive equitable. You waive it. It is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So that's why I'm teaching that. And I'm teaching you guys the reason. I don't want you guys being misled by whatever. I don't even know what motivations would be to mislead people, especially, with what we've, as far as the community we built and the knit how tight we've made things. So I'm very pleased with the help that we have now. All the admins, you guys, 100%. I would trust these people with my life for real. So, I expect that you guys can trust them as well. If you have any issues, I don't think we have any of what we have now. There's nobody struggling with the same things that people struggle with before. So, all good. I welcome you guys to all come, and I just want you to be, aware that this bothers me that, someone goes and says negative things about someone else to change people's minds about the way that they feel about something because they don't understand it and they want other people to believe them. And so when that is said, all of my heart, I promise, my heart's over here going down this narrow path. I got to keep these people straight up and on the narrow path. And then I got people scheming in the background to do other things with other things using the same people that I brought. It doesn't make any sense, and I can never make sense of that. I just can't. I'm sorry. So anyway, let's move on. The establishment of the Court of Chancery in the 14th century, it was a pivotal moment in the evolution of equity. And the court became known for the ability to issue remedies, such as injunctions, which are orders, or to do or refrain from something. Okay, we talked about that briefly. Specific performance was ordering the fulfillment of a contractual obligation, and rescission was a cancellation of a contract. Okay, these remedies are available in common law courts, which typically only awarded monetary damages. Over time, Chancery developed a robust body of equitable principles and precedents that supplemented the common law. Equity is deeply rooted in moral and ethical considerations, okay? So before someone leaves, they should give the person that they had an agreement with notice, right? So if someone's going to go do something different than what the status quo is, you need to give notice to remain in honor. Otherwise, it's not equitable because the people that are around you deserve to know what your plans are as well as you do, right? I mean, that's just part of you want to do business. I want to split and make sure you get what's fair for you and I get what's fair for me. The only time that someone would not want to give notice is if they are doing something that is not going to be approved or it's not going to be looked on favorably for them because their intent is not pure. That's the only time. That's the only time, folks. The only time, I'm going to tell you this too, again, one more time. The only time somebody will not put something in writing is if their intent is to do something deceptive, because there is no reason in any day and age why somebody shouldn't, if they are willing to put you through the torture and the trouble, then they should be willing to put their name on it, okay? Period. That's what it is, okay? So we're going to talk about moral and conscientious foundations of equity, the principles. Equity is rooted in moral and ethical consideration. So when you're doing a contract with somebody, it isn't always the contract that, well, the contract is the contract has part of the consideration in it, okay? Or it has the consideration in it, but it's not part of the consideration is, well, let me just say it like this. Have you ever gone and found somebody that you didn't want to do business with, like you thought, oh my gosh, this is chaotic. I've learned in my life, because when I was younger, I used to say, well, I want this no matter what. And I would do business with somebody no matter what the cost. Well, sometimes it was the cost of dealing with somebody that was bad in business. Like they couldn't handle their affairs. And, they were doing things behind in the background. And like, they were doing, like, say, for example, I don't know, say you guys start up a company. Okay. Say you start up a company and you start up with a partner. You have a partner that's in the company with you. And you say, hey, partner, I'm going to go on vacation. And you go on vacation, you come back, and the partner went and made another arrangement with all of your all the stuff that you guys created together and didn't tell you about it. And then people started not talking to you and you didn't know why. So that's part of what the equitable and moral conscience is, giving notice on something like that. Like if you're going to do that, again, you got to split. It's to say, hey, what you created is yours. What I created is mine. And the whole idea behind it is abundance, folks. It's abundance. It's that we have so much, or at least your belief system, we have so much out there in abundance that we can go and make more, because that's what God gave us. That's what our Creator gave us. Our Creator gave us this right here so we could go and invest in things out there, okay? And investing means spending your time, because time is all you have. That's it. That's all. You're given a certain amount of time to be here, and then it ends, and that's it. And you don't know when it is. It's not, you have something to do here, and you need to go do it. But we're taught that you need to go chase that thing. And that thing is not equitable. That thing is owned by a company. And it's actually a company's vision that a company has put in your head. Okay? So let me just give an example. And I hope that I'm not touching on anybody's like sensitive subject or topic of profession. But let's just say, and I can do this because, I can exemplify this simply because this is what I watched in my family. I watched my father, who to me is a hero. He will always be a hero. My dad is always going to be a hero to me, but he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. He flew in the Ia Drang Valley. He was a recipient of the Silver Star in 2010. Many people don't know this about my dad or about me, but he's in, there is an article, actually, I can show you guys. I've never done this before, but let me go find it. So this is a really cool article. So this is actually, it's still on there. So I'll show you guys or I'll just move it over. How about that? Now you guys can see it. I'll put it up there. Oh, that's still the right one. Okay, so let me go change it. I'll just change and then present it again. I have never done this before, and I hope it's okay. Okay, so anyway, this is my dad, guys. So this is my father, and the story is Frank Marino, whose Vietnam experiences were portrayed in a book and movie, has been recommended for the Medal of Honor. And he was a soldier once. Now, I'm going to explain some equity in this, guys, because there's a lot of equity in this story. And this book, it was done by, let me see. So let me explain a little bit about this. This is this one right here. This is the book. Okay, so we were soldiers once and young, and it is about Hal Moore. So General Hal Moore and Joseph Galloway was the photographer that was hired back in that time to go and do a report on this, and he wrote a recommendation letter to for my father and 4 other people. To be recommended for the Medal of Honor. It's very political, folks. It's very political because here it gets into politics right now. And not only is it about a Mexican, my father is a Mexican man, and now it becomes about a Mexican and a Puerto Rican guy or a Cuban guy who didn't get it. So the only 2 were not well, I'm going to say just white skin, 100% white skinned European. That's all it is. It comes down to that. What they did is in 1991, they came out with a new amendment because my father was rejected for the Medal of Honor, had the same letter, flew in the same helicopter with Toutal, and didn't receive the same medal. So he got a lesser medal. Well, I'm not going to say why. I think you guys can read why. But the fact of the matter is, under things that we perceive to be real, he was led by the ego to go and chase this dream of his, which was to go and be a hero, right? To go and be a hero of a helicopter and to save people from bad people. And it was all created. It was all made up and created for that. So he was a soldier once. It talks about he retired a major. He grew up. He's in Glendale. That's where we lived. I lived there for many years in Arizona. And on November 14, 15, 65, he was at landing zone X-ray. So they call it LZ X-ray in the Iadring Valley. And at that time, the helicopter dropped 450 American soldiers into a clearing where they were immediately surrounded by 2,000 Vietnamese soldiers. The ensuing battle became the subject of the book, We Were Soldiers Once, by General Hal Moore and Joseph Galloway. Marino said the only recognition he received was an entry in the chapter notes in the back where mention is made of the original recommendations for the crew. That's a true story, folks. You can go look in the book, and his name is mentioned in the back as Marino, but nowhere else is he mentioned in anywhere. And I'm not complaining. The truth shall set you free, and we all know. The book was made into a movie with the same name by Mel Gibson and Sam Elliott. While Marino is not portrayed in Hollywood version, this combat veteran was awarded for Distinguished Flying Cross for his real life heroism. Now, in 2010, my dad got the Silver Star awarded by John McCain. Ugh, if that isn't disgusting, I don't know what is. But he received a medal from John McCain in 2010 for the Silver Star, and he's still, to this day, they're waiting for him to just pass on, is what they're waiting. This is, like, guys and gals, I've watched this. I have watched this pattern over history, and you guys look, it's the people that are given these medals are the same bloodline that we're talking about, and that are continuing all this stuff. They want to stay in control, and they want to keep awarding themselves, and that's it. Exclude everybody else, because you're not part of our clique. He says, I was a frequent witness to feats of heroism, acts so clearly above and beyond the call of duty on the part of the volunteer helicopter pilot crew. That's what Joe Galloway said in his letter. Joe Galloway was a Times reporter. He was a reporter for like 17 years or something, but he said in my 17 years or my 11 years or something, but it was above 10 years. He said, I've never seen the heroism arise to such a level in all the battles that I've been in. And he named like 3 different battles that he'd been in as a correspondent, and he had never seen that. And all the time, it's right here. Yet, and all the time, I never saw more savage combat than I did in the 3 days in LZ X-ray, nor men more brave than those who literally kept us alive by fighting their selfless actions of flying time and time again into the heart of combat in helicopters that were unarmored and essentially unarmed. And that's true, guys. I can tell you, like, I'm getting emotional because I remember my dad, like, he still tells me, or he still told me recently, about how when they would, guys can see this in movies too, but he's like, that's totally real, when they would take buckets of water and just dump them into the helicopter, and all the blood from the wounded soldiers would just dump out the side. That was just like a normal thing. Clean it out and go back out and get more. And that's, it's really sad what they do to people and get them to believe and think. Without them, America would have lost its first major battle in Vietnam. We know the real true story about that now. Marino earned a Purple Heart and a second Distinguished Flying Cross after being wounded himself, rescuing wounded in January 1966, about 60 days after the Battle of LZ X-ray. He was featured in the book Battles in the Monsoon, 1st Cavalry Division, first year in Vietnam, by military historian General S.L.A. Marshall. I've talked about that to you guys. His helicopter was shot down, and he spent the night under siege with 12 other American soldiers until we were pulled out the following morning. He said, ironically, though repeatedly risked his life during 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, he still marvels at some narrow escapes while growing up in Dos Cabezas. So my dad grew up with dirt floors in his house. they didn't have windows. They had my granddad died from black lung in Dos Cabezas, Wilcox area. He and his younger brother had a summer job caring for 2 Dobermans, which the owner of the mascot mine had left to keep outsiders off the property, he said. The mine was 5 miles from where they lived, so Marino and his brother hiked up the mountain, engaging in a reconnaissance of everything along the way. We even found a herd of horses running wild in Dos Cabezas and ultimately picked 2 out that allowed themselves to be ridden, and we enjoyed bareback riding with nothing else than a rope halter to control them. How we lived through those escapades really escapes me. When Marino was 12, his father, Angel Marino, was hospitalized with minor silicosis. So my granddad died of black lung. And, so, I mean, that's commerce. So he went into a place to do something for people in commerce. And the result of the work that he did ended up killing him. And, well, because he didn't know who he was, he ended up just dying and no one ended up with anything. And that's it. It just was his death. And it's sad. And it just goes on. And that's the way trust works if you don't know how it works. It's just the way it works. Their default, their automatic path down to wherever is the path of least resistance. And it doesn't involve anyone else. That's the way it goes until you know. If it happens to you guys, if you guys have an estate that's probated, well, and this, again, this is not legal advice. This is just something that I heard from this thing that poofed on my shoulder one day. It just, poof, it was like right here. And I was like, what's up with you? And it just started talking to me. And so I started listening. And yes, I've had a mental evaluation. And yes, I passed it. So anyway, my father said, in essence, I became the man of the house at an early age through my mother aptly picked up reins and led the family until I produced till I graduated from high school, joined the Army, and left for the next quarter century. My dad was in the military for 24 years, and he retired a major in 1978. We lived in Mississippi at the time. He retired in Jackson, Mississippi, and shortly after that, we moved out to Arizona, where he was in audit services from. He worked out in Mississippi Power and Light, and then we transferred to Arizona. So I fit pretty well in with the group, but it was difficult to growing up because whether anyone wants to face it, ethnic issues were prevalent even more. It doesn't change. Some things don't change. Living in Dos Cabezas and commuting to school by bus was a real bummer, he said. When school was over, we retreated to our own little world 15 miles away. Marino remembers working weekdays for the Holland family, owners of Rancho Sacatal, which produced show cattle at the time. I worked directly for a groundskeeper, a gentle old man who was my mentor during those difficult times, he said. Sometimes I was permitted to join cowboys at the cattle pens and care for the bulls being groomed for the shows. On idle days, I loved to hike over the mountain ranges with my trusty .22 rifle, just enjoying the weather and the sights, he told the Ranger News. Marino played Wilcox High School football for one season, but never caught the eye of the coach, he said. One big drawback was living in Dos Cabezas because he kept me from after-school practices with the team. Marino followed the Korean War closely at every turn because of 2 cousins that were serving. My most vivid memories were the pictures of Life magazine in the newly introduced Air Force jet planes and encounters with the then emerging Russian MiG-15 jets. He said, when these cousins visited us and I saw them in uniform, I knew that this was what I wanted to do and try anyway, said Marino, adding that he couldn't know that he would pursue a career in the Army. One was the most influential persons in his life was a high school band teacher, Mr. Thompson, who was active in the Civil Air Patrol. He taught one of the first subjects in aviation in the school back in 1955-56, and through an affiliation with the Civil Air Patrol, I got a ride on a C-45 twin-engine propeller-driven light transport aircraft. I believe this provided me the greatest incentive to fly. He said, I never really knew how I would do it, but I knew someday I would. Marino graduated from Wilcox High School in 1956. In January 1961, he married my mom. Amazing mom. She's awesome. She died in 2008 of cancer. And they met in Jacksonville, Florida. And I just actually went back last year kind of a revisit for myself and kind of a healing thing to visit where, like, I remember vividly being a little kid, and I remember my mom pushing me in the stroller. I remember being in the stroller, and I remember her pushing me on this marina in Flagler Beach, Florida, on the pier at Flagler Beach. And so I had an opportunity. Like, it was kind of weird how it worked out last year because I didn't plan on staying at this place, but I ended up finding a place like close to the beach, and lo and behold, it was right across like from where my mom took me on the pier. So it was kind of like a refreshing thing, and I haven't really talked about that before, but that's a true story. So the my dad graduated from Wilcox High School in '56, married my mom. They lived there briefly before my dad went to Germany. He went twice for officer candidate school, and he never accepted until the war effort. So they rejected his application over and over and over. Vietnam expanded, and the Army sought out aviation candidates to fly the new helicopters, said my dad. And I had my application in first. He returned to Germany to report Fort Walters, Texas, on the day after his father's funeral in 1963. He graduated from helicopter flight school in April 1964, the 11th Air Assault in Fort Benning, Georgia, where he trained for 18 months before going to Vietnam. In '66, he received the Battlefield Commission and second lieutenant in armor. From there, his career took off in a whirlwind as an aviator in some of the most exciting adventures he could have imagined. His wife, my mom, accompanied him overseas on many assignments. I believe that you can give her as much credit for success I had in the military, as she was my support base and a loving mother who kept the home front going. Marino told the Range News. They were married for 47 years before passing in March 2008, leaving behind 4 grown children, three girls and 1 boy. Marino retired in Jackson, Mississippi in '81 after serving 4 years as an advisor in the Mississippi National Guard. In '85, he returned to Arizona, working in the Palo Verde Nuclear Power Station. He's now a real estate consultant. So I'm getting all emotional. But let me explain. So I went into real estate in 2010, 2010, or I think it was 2000. Wait, no, 2007. 2007, I went to no, I take that back. Let's go back. I went to real estate school in 1997. I was in that for till 2009. In 2007, I went and I was hired as a recruiter for Remax Professionals in Glendale, Arizona, which is a very, very high prominent sales team that Nate Martinez and Frank Russo run. And these guys are really top notch guys in the real estate field. They don't understand what I'm teaching. They don't understand trusts and things like that, but they understand real estate, which is, it's strange because people are trained in a specific field, but they're really good at what they do. As a recruiter, I recruited my father from real estate. I had brought him into the real estate field, and I actually got him into the same business I was in, working for the same company. And then when I progressed over to this other company, I moved him over there. So he went from a place where he was splitting his fees 50-50 to a place where he was paying to stay there, but it was it was the top of the line. Remax is the top of the line professionals that are out there in the real estate field. So they're trained in what they know, but they don't know what I'm teaching. Okay. So I'm telling you guys, like, there's no money. So you can't pay anybody anything. Okay. You can, but you just need to stick to your guns and learn what I'm teaching you. Okay. So my dad went back to a Marty Robbins weekend. The museum was a large part of Glendale for a long time. Added that he was, so they had a place called the Museum in Glendale. My dad used to always go there and watch these people play live. They play live music. So that's the link. I'll take the link and put that in for you guys so you can see it. I'll put it in the chat window. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, so that's where the article is, guys. You can see that. And the other thing too is that you'll find that I've been working on some things to try to fix this whole scenario in the way that it is right now, because it's backwards. It's not right the way it is. It shouldn't be Like, if other people were in the same vehicle and they got the same thing, then, I mean, you either like do one of two things. You either take theirs back or you give the other guy, the other guys what they deserve. Now, I want you guys to know, like, the statistic of a gunner making it out of a helicopter after a tour in Vietnam is like, it's less than 20%. Like, people, they didn't make it out of there. Those guys were sitting in the window like sitting ducks. And if you get rid of the gunner, then nobody's shooting at you, right? So, well, the incentive was to get that gunner all over the place. So they didn't make it a lot of times. And this guy Kumba, he made it, man. This guy Kumba is like, I mean, I don't know where I don't even know if the guy's alive anymore. But he was in Puerto Rico, and he was a guy that like did exactly the same thing. And let me tell you something. I know for a fact that this man had medical problems, and a lot of it were the result of when he served, when he did this time in there. And like, part of the stuff that he gave up his body for, nobody was there to help him. And he's in another country now, like well, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, you can't turn your back on people. You can't turn your back on your people. You can't turn your back on the people that did the things, even if it's just a perception. Even if you're up there putting a show on for the other people, you can't turn your back on the people that go out there and stick their nose out every single day and watch other people that they're around, that they begin to care about, just die off like flies. And, you know, the incentive. Here's what gets me, and this is why I teach what I teach. Because if you don't know that something is out there for you to have for your family, that it was intended for you, then you don't know to go get it. If someone died that you don't know about and they didn't ever tell you that you were related and they left you something, then how are you going to know to go get it? You're never going to know. You'd never know. So what if I tell you this? What if I tell you that when you are brought into this world, you are given or assigned numbers, and nobody tells you about those numbers or exactly what those numbers are. They tell you about numbers, but everything tied to those numbers it's like, get that thing away from me. It seems like it's bringing you down. Why? Because it is. That's all it can do. And that's all that debt can do. And that's all that debt is debt is sin, folks. Debt is the ultimate sin. It is the existence of what the sin is. So you can't say that, you know, you want to do something one way and yet you're going and doing it a completely different way at all other times. You can't be operating as in two different realms at one time. Okay, it just doesn't work. That's like operating in public and private. You can't go in, and here's another thing. You can't go into a place and say, I'm an heir. Okay, you can't go into some place and say, I'm an heir of this estate, and then in the same time say, you got my executor letter, right? Because what you guys have to know is that executor is a statutory word. It's not an equitable word. It's statutory. It was made up as their company laws. So you go down in their company laws, you start playing in their company laws. Well, now you're subject to their company laws. Because waiver and consent, the selection of one thing is the elimination of all others. If you could pick more than one thing, that would be called polygamy in marriage. And we are not polygamous. And we are not polygamous in the sense of equity either. Okay, you can only be either public or you can be private, or you can not know who you are and tell other people that they need to go and do these things that are inequitable too, because you don't know who you are. So when people are telling people to go and be the executor, that is wrong. Okay. That is liability, liability, liability written all over it. So that is incorrect and it's wrong. And equity will tell you it's wrong because you can't be two at the same time. And if someone doesn't understand that principle and is trying to teach something, then they are not in a position to be teaching. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. They're not in a position to be teaching you about something that they haven't realized how it works yet. And these things, equity is so important, folks. It's not something you want to play around with. When you assert something, you can have everything you want as long as you know what you are. But the moment that you hesitate or you're apprehensive, then it becomes a problem. And that's where we end up losing. We end up not getting an equitable remedy out of what we're trying to accomplish. And like, we have to remain in equity with clean hands, and we have to, the people that we do business with. I mean, maybe this is an example. What I'm giving you in real life is exemplary, and it's a good example for people to see that, I mean, everything that I've said to you guys as far as being members, I've 100% like been straight up and transparent with you. Okay. The times that people lose or don't comprehend is when they don't know what the next step is, or they think they've finished it and they haven't. There's a reason why the maxim equity will not perfect an imperfect gift exists. All right. Now, you guys know, I'm going to give you an example, but you know already what happens when you pay something to somebody before you get it and you don't know who they are in some circumstances. I'm not saying everyone, but I've had certain circumstances. Now, there's a lot of people that won't even go on Facebook and won't even pay. They won't put anything on there because they're like, oh, no, I ain't paying anything on Facebook. Forget that. I'll meet you in person, and we're meeting at the police department. That's really smart, because there's a lot of people out there trying to scam other people. And some of those things where they say, messages or messenger, they want you to get WhatsApp. That's a scam, guys. All of that is a scam. It's a scam. All of that. There is no, you can only find, those things that are too good to be true are too good to be true. That's the reason why they're too good to be true. There is no shortcut to equity, folks. You guys aren't just doing things to spin your wheels, I promise you. The things that you've done are your record, but you've taken it only so far in law, and now you're ready to take that into equity. But if you don't know how to do that, then you need to get with us, and you need to talk with the admins and find out what we can do to help you get to that point. Because it's okay to be frustrated as long as you don't spend time in your frustration, as long as you don't hang out there and make your frustration a part of your bad energy. If you have any bad energy, hopefully you don't have any, because, a long time ago, guys and gals, I used to spend time, and I just think, I don't even know how I lived with myself back then. Seriously, the things that I thought of, like, this world is dreadful, I'm never going to get out of this. That was my thought. Like, I can't even say that stuff anymore, because it's just like, it's bad. To me, it's like nails on a chalkboard now. But when you learn that your thoughts are what keep you in line with everything that happens in your life, and how we get off onto things that are not positive and not equitable, are we begin thinking about alternative ways that are outside of equitable means. In other words, outside of the realm of the conscious fairness. When you say, no, I wouldn't want to do that because I feel bad, but you start exploring outside of that line once, you feel desperate. And we don't make rational decisions when we do that. So that's why it's inequitable to, you want to think about what you're doing before you do it. That's why I always, seriously, guys, sometimes I'll take a couple of days before I respond to some things. I'm not being disrespectful. In fact, it's just 100%, 180 degrees the opposite direction. It is being 100% respectful, because if I just respond, it will be emotional, and that won't be a fair response, because sometimes what I feel at that moment may be like being upset, or maybe I'm even laughing at whatever it is, and I don't want to come across as not being serious either. So it's just better sometimes that we wait, and that's equitable. And you know what? Sometimes I've found out that when I am equitable, many people can't be equitable at the same time. And what I mean by that is my silence is never telling them that I don't want to be a part of what they've got going on. My silence is always telling them that, of course, I want to be a part of what you've got going on, but I don't want to do it the way that you're doing it if it's inequitable, if it's going to be harming anyone. And everything I've ever done is always geared around, okay, how can I help the mass of people without leaving people out, but not just, I can't give it to people because this is something that you get and you can lose. And if you don't know what you're doing, you lose it. You lose it all. And if no one is giving value up front in exchange for what I'm giving you, then it means nothing to anybody. And that's the reason why valuable consideration is even a thing in commerce, in real life, in barter and trading, in gold and silver, in the de jure anything, in the natural anything. You know, someone exchanges a talent for another talent, or someone exchanges a talent for something that already exists, or someone exchanges a talent for a promise to give a talent, or, you know, different things can be arranged in contracts, but we're not taught that stuff. We're taught a uniform set of contracts that go by a uniform set of rules that just all happen to be military jurisdiction. And that's unfortunate. So, let's move on. I want to get into this. We're going to talk about a couple of things here, but I want to. So, all right. So, the prohibition of undue influence and coercion is rooted in ethical principle of autonomy. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant emphasize the importance of respecting individuals' autonomy and free will. Equity ensures that agreements and decisions are made voluntarily without manipulation, reflecting this ethical principle. In the case of Briggs versus Day, which is an 1885 case, the court emphasized the importance of avoiding undue influence in legal agreements. If somebody's saying, hey, if you don't sign this, I'm going to cut off your pinky, that's undue influence, okay? That's not okay. The decision is reinforced that the principle that agreements must be made freely and fairly. When someone's holding up gardening snips to your pinkies, that's not freely and fairly. When they're saying, hey, sign this or I'm taking your pinky with me, that is not freely and fairly, okay? Just so we are on the same page. Okay, so let's see here. Moving forward, in personal and professional relationships, we should all ensure that agreements and decisions are made without pressure or manipulation and respect the autonomy and free will of others. We should also have the ability to stand up for ourselves if somebody wants to challenge us as to whether we have the authority to do something. When someone tells you guys, you need to sign it this way, and you ask them, you say, are you saying, is that like legal advice? Are you giving me legal advice? Because this is actually money. So are you telling me how to spend my money? You could ask them that too. Are you telling me how to spend my money? You guys could do that. They'd probably be like set back. I assure you, they'd probably be like, whoa, she just said that, or he just said that. So definitely. So in your relationships, respect the autonomy and free will of others, and strive to create an environment where decisions are made voluntarily with uniform consent. Principle particularly relevant in contractual negotiations and in interpersonal relationships where you have fairness and respect, and those things are essential to making trust happen, okay? So we have to maintain fair play and justice. In the principle and fair play of justice is central to many ethical theories, including utilitarianism and deontological ethics. Philosophers like John Stuart Mill and Immanuel Kant emphasize the importance of treating others fairly and ensuring just outcomes. Equity embodies this principle by promoting fairness and equality in all designs. And we talked about Keach and Stanford, and I'm going to give you another one here. So in Everett versus Williams in 1725, a court emphasized the importance of transparency and honesty in legal dealings. The plaintiffs had engaged in a fraudulent conduct, and the court held that such behavior violated equitable principles. The decision reinforced the importance of honesty and transparency in all dealings. You guys, when you're not being honest and you're not being transparent in your dealings, that is inequitable. It is fraudulent conduct, period. It says it like I'm reading it to you. Everett versus Williams in 1725. This is still applicable today. If your personal and professional life strive to maintain transparency and provide truthful information and avoid deceit, the principle is relevant in business and legal context where transparency and honesty are critical. And they're important if you want to have trust, period. You can't, how are you going to, if someone sees you go deceive someone else, how are they going to trust you? I can't be around people that I can see and witness someone else deceive them. I can't. I don't care. Like, there is no good intent behind deceiving anyone, especially if they didn't know. And it's the fact that they didn't know that makes it deceiving. You understand? So you guys, this is important when you're talking to your creditors too, because if you're not letting them know, then you're being deceitful as well. You see, that's the way that this works. It works all different ways. So to live a life in honor and good faith, one must embrace the principles of equity and a lifelong commitment. It's not just, I'm going to be equitable in this dealing and then the others, we'll work it out when we get to those. These principles serve as guidelines and framework for ethical conduct. They fostering trust, respect, and fairness in all interactions. By adhering to the maxims, you can navigate your complexities in life with integrity and compassion, and not being sneaky and like deceptive to people, contributing to more than just an equitable world. The principles of equity are your compass, guiding you towards a life of honor, integrity, and good faith. Embrace the timeless truths, and you'll find yourself on a path that not only enriches your own life, but also positively impacts those around you. And may you walk in a path with a spring in your step and a twinkle in your eye and a steadfast commitment to justice and fairness. And that is the presentation on that. So let's go over to, I'm going to show you guys something else too. Okay, so we've also, going back a little bit to, we're going to talk about moral and conscientious foundations. So equity is deeply rooted in moral and ethical considerations. It aims to achieve justice on fairness and specific circumstances of each case, okay, rather than strictly adhering to rigid rules. Story emphasizes that a court of equity acts upon the person, and his conscience is affected. His conscience, folks, not his legal description, not his straw man, not his sestake, not anything. His conscience. This is a man's conscience. That's why we do equity, because you can't appeal to the conscience in law, period. Okay? This means that equity courts focus on the fairness and intentions behind actions, taking into account the ethical dimensions of legal disputes. So going back to equity and statutory, okay, the difference. When you guys choose one, when you choose to go down below, you're up here with your creator, okay, you're up here with your creator, like way up here in the clouds with your creator, and you're like, no, I want to go down and do this statutory stuff, this madness. These other statutory positions exist down here. God is up here, folks, okay? God gave you an estate, did he not? Did he not? I mean, were you not brought into this world? You were brought into this world. If you were brought into this world, then you might be a member of our Creator. Yes, you. And if you are, then you belong to that gang first. Okay? That's the ultimate gang to belong to. Over the years, we've had a really, 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 I mean, just over the years, I just watched this. Um, I watch how everything's transpired, but I grew up when I was a kid. I always thought the Pope was creepy, guys. I always did. And I always thought, what is there to love about that man? He like looks creepy to me. But I always had respect because I was told to have respect. I was told that this man was, he was closer to my creator than anyone I'd ever known. And I didn't know that, well, and I'm not trying to deter anyone's belief system because I don't want anyone to believe the way that I believe. But I'll tell you that my research and the knowledge has taught me that there was a creation of a scenario that was to be based upon salvation. Because if you don't believe that you are the ultimate power, then you are looking and relying on someone else to be ultimate power for you. And if you rely on that, even a hesitation in your thought process, you lose. You go from a sine wave to a sin. You drop the E. And the way you do that is by not knowing who you are, by losing contact with your creator, by losing the connection, that connection with your creator that you had that was severed by a lack of knowledge. It was a lack of knowledge. That's all it was, folks. You guys gave up something that you didn't even know because you didn't know that it existed to claim it. And I'm telling you right now that you have the ability to go and make the record to claim the things that are yours, that belong to the dirt underneath your feet. But the moment that you believe that you don't have that ability to do it in the way that I tell you as an heir of your creator, then you have to go search out other ways, executor letter, to go and be with God because you don't believe in yourself. You don't believe in yourself because you don't believe that you have the authority to do what you do. You think you have to go get a letter that was made up by another company and put their title at the top of it and say, see, now I'm part of your group and now I can tell you what to do. That's wrong. That's wrong because you don't even need a letter. You need a publication. Okay? That's the key. And that's where people lose track. They don't stay into this equity long enough. Folks, you know what? I told you guys before, like I literally went to prison and other people that are teaching this went to prison too. And that's how some of us learn this. But the people that are teaching what I'm teaching are teaching what they've learned from me up to this point. And I'm not done. I haven't been done teaching. And if you guys think that you've learned it all, you're crazy because this is something that people study their entire lives and never learn it all. So you just have to be very cautious and precautionary in what you do because people will take advantage of other people when they see that they have an opportunity to do it. And, it's like I feel bad sometimes because I feel like I should be, keeping a better eye on some things, but, I can't do everything all at the same time. I can't. I just can't. I just have to trust people that people are going to make the right decisions and do the right things. And, if they don't, then, I have to live with that fact. It just is what it is. I can't change people and make anybody do anything that they don't want to do. And people are going to go and be who they want to be. I'm just really, I'm saddened. I really am because I expected more from a lot of people. And, I don't feel like those people, they honored what they said they were going to do. And it leads to disappointment and it leads to these lessons where I want to give you guys and teach you more of why, because you deserve an explanation. Like, let's turn this into a learning experience. And you deserve the explanation, that, that exists. I mean, it is what it is. And I'm not going to like go and spread people's business, but I think that, if you guys really want to If you want to reach out, um, I'm not like I said. I'm gonna be honest, but I'm not gonna I'm not out to ruin anyone at all ever. That this has never been about me ever. People think that sometimes people think that maybe I'm dragging this out, or how long are we going to sit in this and do this notices and stuff. Well, that's up to you guys, because you've got what you created now and you just got to go enforce it. But that's part of where your knowledge comes in. I'm teaching you that every week. I give you guys the stuff every single week and I teach you how to do that, but you have to go and apply it. And well, let's just take another look over here. I'll show you guys again. When someone does equity, this is what happens. You get this score that goes up. Okay, that's what happens when you do equity. Equity sees done that which ought to be done. All someone did was bring them a record that said, do this, and they did it. And it's a matter of knowing what you're doing, how to do it. It's not just, slapping something out there and saying, hey, I want to be a part of this, right? It's a matter of knowing the whole scenario behind what you're doing. It's behind knowing why something, if something doesn't work, why we deserve an explanation. Why doesn't it work? I want to tell you, but I don't know how to tell you until we have more information on what is the equitable means, what is going on, what's happened up to this point. So I'm going to talk to you about one other thing that's a very interesting topic before we wrap this up, and this is just going to be quick. So today I was on a divine mission to uncover the ethereal connection between sin and sign, S-I-N and S-I-N-E. The journey to embark upon this weaved through the realms of etymology, mathematics, and a dash of theology, all while keeping things delightfully humorous and scholarly. So the theory that sin is sign without the E could have roots in playful exploration of etymology. The word sin in Old English is derived from the Germanic root sund, signifies an offense against divine law, while sign, S-I-N-E, comes from Latin sinus, meaning bay or fold, found its place in trigonometry by Arabic translations of Greek mathematical texts. By stripping sign of its final E, we whimsically transform a mathematical term into a moral failing, perhaps suggesting that removing a bit of formality, the E, from our structured lives heads us to transgression. After all, who needs precision in morality when one can sin with impunity? Let's indulge in a bit of mathematical mischief in trigonometry. The sine function relates to angles and right-angled triangles. Some might jest that if you take the sine, sin, out of mathematics, subtract the E, and you are left with a basic error, a moral or logical misstep. This aligns with the idea that removing a crucial part of an equation or life leads to imbalance, much like sin disrupts spiritual equilibrium. In theological discourse, sin represents a deviation from divine law. One might humorously propose that by removing the E, a symbol of eternal or essential sin represents humanity's attempt to cut corners in spirituality, ignoring the eternal aspect of our actions. Therefore, sin without the E becomes a shorthand for our perennial struggle with moral shortcuts. Let's heap back. Theologians and legal scholars alike have debated the nature of sin. Thomas Aquinas, for instance, described sin as a deviation from reason and divine law in Summa Theologica, 1 and 2, Q71, Article 6. If we whimsically subtract the E, perhaps symbolizing eternal law, we are left with sin, a deviation still, but now deprived of its divine context. Much like a law without order becomes anarchy. So concluding this, and on this note, we have 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Whoever so committeth sin transgresseth also the law. For sin is the transgression of the law. So sin is the removal of the E to where you are no longer sending out sine waves of your own. You're under someone else's sin waves. So with that, I want you guys to have an amazing day. I send you much, much love and energy. I appreciate all you guys. And if you have questions, concerns, just reach out to me or JC. You can get us on the website, or you can find us on Telegram. And we have a Facebook page. And yeah, www.lonewolfpack.net. You guys have an amazing day. I send you much love and energy, and I yield.